Now back to one of our top stories on this Saturday. President Obama met yesterday and will be meeting again with congressional leaders from both parties. The next meetings will take place the week after Thanksgiving. They're going to try to hammer out a deal to avoid the so-called Fiscal Cliff. The two sides met for more than an hour at the White House yesterday, emerging optimistic about a deal, but there are still major sticking points, including the tax rates for the wealthy. Take a listen.
Tax reform that eliminates wasteful tax preferences to generate revenue will help bring fairness and efficiency to our tax system. This approach makes more sense than raising tax rates, which will harm nearly 1 million small businesses and cost hundreds of thousands of jobs.
The other path is for Congress to pass a law right away to prevent a tax hike on the first $250,000 of anyone's income. That means all Americans, including the wealthiest Americans, get a tax cut. And 98% of Americans and 97% of all small business owners won't see their income taxes go up a single dime. The Senate's already passed a bill like this. Democrats in the House are ready to pass one too. All we need is for Republicans in the House to come on board.
Ford O'Connell is chairman of the Civic Forum PAC. He's a former outreach director for John McCain's presidential campaign. Ryan Clayton is a Democratic campaign consultant, founder of 100proofpolitics.com. Good to see you, gentlemen. Thanks so much. Good. Our first chat since Election Day. And Ford, let me start with you. I am an optimist at heart, and I saw the lawmakers emerge from that meeting at the White House yesterday. They sounded like there might be an opportunity to get a deal done. What do you think?
You know, I'm hopeful. They're clearly striking the right public tone, but I'm really not all that confident. I think what's really going to happen here is we're probably going to agree to a framework and then put a stopgap measure in place and really continue this into the new year. Remember, we're going to be bumping up against the debt ceiling sometime in March. So this is a little bit of the fiscal cliff, a little bit of the debt ceiling, but we really need to get our fiscal house in order. The question is, how are we going to do it?
Ryan, revenue is on the table. The Republicans are using the word. They say they're for it. What can the Democrats put on the table? What should Democrats say they would be willing to cut in terms of spending?
For sure. Well, the fiscal crossroads that politicians face right now represent two very clear options for the road ahead. You know, either we're going to make the middle class pay even more so that the very rich can pay even less, or we're going to make our country and our economy work for people that work for a living once again. You know, we can either keep these trickle-down tax cuts for the world's wealthiest individuals, or we can protect Social Security. We can
Ryan,
keep
what would
these
let me just go back to my initial question.
What
could Democrats put on the country? If Republicans are talking about revenue, which they didn't really want to talk about in the debt ceiling negotiations, they're talking about it now. What can the Democrats say they would be willing to cut specifically?
Well, what Americans need now is jobs, not cuts. And I think that was pretty loud and clear in last week's election. You know, elections have consequences. Y'all got beat. And right now, Americans are saying that the most important thing we can do is put Americans back to work. Because if you cut funding for public education, then you're firing the teacher in your child's classroom. If you cut funds for public safety, you're firing the firefighter in your local neighborhood. And if you cut Social Security and Medicare, then you're firing the nurse that works and takes care of your mother.
Ryan, you're making me feel less. Ryan's making me feel less optimistic, I have to say.
Well, that's exactly right. Ryan, the question is, why do you want to raise rates on the top 2%, those small business owners who file as individuals, their business income, when what we really need to do is fix the corporate tax code? And the best way to put the revenue on the table right now is basically to cap deductions for the top 2% at $50,000. If you do that, you will get the needed revenue.
I agree with you. I think the thing we have to do is make sure that corporations, like everyone else in this country, pay their fair share. So let's keep middle class taxes right where they're at. Let's cut taxes on small businesses, and then let's make sure that these corporations oftentimes
but Ryan, to do that, we have to fix the corporate tax code as well.
I mean, let me jump in. Let me try to sort of steer you guys here a little bit. And Ford, we heard the president a minute ago in his weekly internet address say, let's have Congress pass a bill right now that will guarantee that tax rates below $250 for families will not be raised. He said, let's do that now. We'll negotiate the other stuff after that. Let's start off with that. The Senate's already done it. Should the House do it?
The House should do it, but they should make sure they get the right framework in place. What President Obama is really trying to do right now is play Russian roulette with the nation's fiscal health. And essentially, the Republicans do need to agree to that, but they need to get more compromise. And the president says he wants to compromise, but he's shown no impetus to compromise because he says if we don't raise the rates on the top 2%, then it's going to go up for everyone. That's bunk, and we all know it. What we can do is cap those deductions at $50,000, and we can get $80 billion in revenue versus the $68 billion by just pushing the rates up on the 2% to what he wants.
Ryan, hold on, Ryan. I was reading your talking points that you provided to us before the interview today. It says the Bush-era tax cuts for the world's wealthiest individuals are the single most important factor driving the debt. But the president doesn't agree with that. The president on Wednesday in his news conference said that it's healthcare costs that is the single biggest driver of the debt. So again, I'm going to try to get you one more time to give me some specifics here when it comes to healthcare entitlements, Medicare, Medicaid. What can Democrats put on the table in these talks? Because both sides have got to put something on the table. What can Democrats say they would be willing to cut?
Well, let me be clear. Social Security is a fully funded government program that has a dedicated stream of revenue, and it doesn't add a single penny to the deficit. It's one of the greatest programs we have going. It's one of the most trusted programs that the American government even runs. And what this is really about is people wanting to cut into Social Security and cut into Medicare and Medicaid and the social safety net. And especially with Social Security, Wall Street has been selling the snake oil of privatization for years now. Because they want to
Ryan,
take
the
that pile of money
problem is
and give it with
that
it
the
on the
Social
stock market.
Security and the Medicare is going to go bankrupt, Ryan.
Well,
you got to be honest here.
True.
Social Security and Medicare is going to go bankrupt over the next 2 decades. Look, the Board of Trustees, everyone agrees on this. And I do agree with you. We need to save these programs, but we have to be smart. Look, I recognize on the defense side, we can hollow out some spending there and probably push it back to 2006 levels. The Democrats are not being honest brokers here, and here's why they're not being honest brokers.
Real quickly,
because they're winning the message game. 80% of Americans fear the fiscal cliff. The problem is only 26% of Americans actually know what it entails. Republicans are losing the message game right now. That's the problem.
This is a debate we're going to have over the next several weeks. We'll invite you back and talk about it again. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.